response to the Supreme Court case, essentially attempting to eliminate affirmative action in colleges and university admissions. What are some of the action steps that you think that we can take, again, to help combat that?
So I'm going to go to a topic, and this is one of the reasons why political activism is so important, because politicians will only speak to the issues that their constituents make them speak to. So for example, they're not going to speak about reparations unless we make them. If you agree, say ashe.
Ashe.
So I want you to consider this. Why, after being denied education for 400 years, would we have to pay for any type of education? I want you to think about this. How many of you, by show of hands in here, have or have had student loan debt? Would you put your hands up? Keep your hand up, look around the room. Pan the camera, wait a minute. Pan the camera in the back. Pan the camera, keep your hands up if you have or have had student loan debt. Now, keep your hand up, put up another hand if you, your spouse, or your child has or have had student loan debt.
Or gonna have.
Or gonna have. Why should any black person in America have to pay anything for education, pre-K to postdoctorate? Our ancestors paid the price.
You may recall that several years ago, billionaire Robert Smith promised to pay off the student loans of an entire graduating class at Morehouse College. But in the process of helping them to do so, he discovered in his research that over 60% of African American wealth goes towards servicing student loans. And most of these loans are being paid to the U.S. government.
Why should we have to pay anything when there has never been a time in American history when education was equitably funded for black people? Wrap your mind around that for a minute. There has never been a time in American history when education has been equitably funded for black people. So, surrounding the question that you asked me, we have to begin to raise these kinds of issues and make the politicians speak to these kinds of issues. But that can't happen by just one person doing it. It takes a collective of people to do that. And one of the things about admissions, governors oftentimes set education policies for the states. But one of the activities that I had my doctoral students do is I had them to look at the state populations across a number of different states with major research-oriented universities and others. They had to look at what was the population of black people in that state. Then they had to look at what was the percentage of black students at those state universities. So a lot of times the state population may be 12% black, but in their major universities, the population might only be 3% black. And I also had them to compare that to what's the percentage of black faculty. Because these are public positions that are what people will call a good job with benefits and all those sorts of things. And what my students found every year that I do this in this research is that there is always a significant gap between the percentage of black people in a particular state and the percentage of black students that are admitted to these schools and the low percentage of black faculty as well. So this issue of the Supreme Court's decision about admissions is deeply significant and will have tremendous impact further down the line. Well, why is that? Because the former president put several of those Supreme Court justices in place that will impact policy for decades and maybe even generations.